Captain Maya Patel stood at the helm of the ESS Horizon, Earth's most advanced deep space research vessel, watching the holographic display of peculiar quantum readings that her science team had been tracking for the past 3 days. The signals defied conventional physics, appearing to propagate faster than light while maintaining coherence across vast distances. Dr. Rodriguez, are you certain these readings aren't equipment malfunctions? Maya asked, her dark eyes fixed on the dancing patterns of light that represented the mysterious quantum phenomena. Absolutely certain, Captain, replied Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the ship's lead quantum physicist. Her fingers flew across the holographic interface as she pulled up comparative data. We've cross-referenced with every known natural phenomenon. This is artificial in origin. The implications hung heavy in the air of the bridge. After centuries of searching the stars for signs of intelligent life, humanity might have just stumbled upon its first evidence of an advanced alien civilization. Lieutenant James Chen, the ship's communications officer, suddenly straightened in his chair. Captain, the quantum fluctuations, they're changing. It's like they're responding to our scans. The holographic display erupted with new patterns, more organized than before. The quantum signals began arranging themselves into geometric shapes that rotated and transformed with mathematical precision. It's a language, Elena whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. They're trying to communicate through quantum entanglement itself. Maya felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't just first contact. This was first contact with a civilization so advanced they used the fabric of space-time as a communications medium. Can we respond? Maybe, Elena said, already working at her station. We can modify our quantum scanning array to emit similar patterns. It won't be as sophisticated, but it might show them we understand. As the crew worked to establish their first primitive response, none of them noticed the subtle distortions in space around the horizon. They were being watched. High above the plane of reality, humans could perceive. The Galactic Council's observation vessel, Starweaver, monitored the situation with increasing alarm. First observer Kethel, a being of crystalline thought and energy, communicated with his fellow observers. They've detected the quantum network far earlier than any species should be capable of, he noted, his thoughts resonating through the ship's neural matrix. Their technological development is completely out of sequence. Perhaps we should intervene, suggested second observer Linra, her energy patterns showing concern. They're not ready for this level of contact. We may not have a choice, Kethel responded. They've already begun attempting communication. Their method is crude, but the fact that they could formulate a response at all with their level of technology is unprecedented. Back on the horizon, Belena's modified quantum array sparked to life, sending their first message into the quantum network. It was simple, a mathematical sequence representing the first 10 prime numbers, followed by a basic atomic model. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The quantum field around the ship came alive with patterns of impossible complexity. Space itself seemed to shiver, and suddenly, the horizon's sensors detected something massive appearing less than a kilometer away. Energy signature detected. Lieutenant Chen called out. Something's decloaking directly ahead. The view screen activated automatically, revealing a sight that left the entire bridge crew speechless. A ship hung in space before them, its surface rippling like liquid metal in impossible geometric patterns. It was beautiful, alien, and absolutely enormous, at least 20 times the size of the horizon. Multiple additional signatures detected, Chen reported, his voice steady despite the situation. We're being surrounded. Maya stood from her captain's chair, straightening her uniform. Humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization was about to begin, and it would start with her ship, her crew. The weight of history pressed down on her shoulders, but she felt only excitement. Open all frequencies, she commanded. Let's introduce ourselves to the galaxy. Above them, the Galactic Council observers watched in fascination as events spiraled far beyond their carefully laid plans. Humanity had forced their hand, advancing faster and thinking more creatively than any species they had encountered in millennia of watching young civilizations emerge. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would be the catalyst. Whether that change would lead to chaos or a new era of innovation remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: there would be no going back to the careful, controlled advancement the Council had maintained for so long. The age of humanity had begun. The next 48 hours aboard the ESS Horizon became a crash course in xenolinguistics and quantum physics. Dr. Elena Rodriguez hadn't slept in 36 hours, her workstation surrounded by floating holographic displays, showing the intricate patterns of quantum communications they were receiving from their alien visitors. "It's not just a language," she explained to Captain Patel, her voice hoarse from exhaustion, but filled with excitement. "It's a whole new way of thinking about quantum mechanics. Each pattern they send us contains layers of meaning, scientific principles embedded within the communication itself." Maya studied the complex geometries floating before them. "You're sitting there teaching us advanced physics through the very method they use to communicate." "Exactly." Elena manipulated one of the patterns, expanding it to show its internal structure. "Look at this sequence. On the surface, it's a greeting, but the way they've structured the quantum entanglement contains information about how they achieve faster-than-light communication. They're not just talking to us, they're showing us how to talk back properly." Lieutenant Chen called out from his station, "Captain, we're receiving new transmissions from Earth. The other research vessels in the sector are reporting similar contact events. This isn't isolated to us anymore." Maya wasn't surprised. Once humanity had noticed the quantum communications network, it was inevitable that other ships would begin detecting it too. What did surprise her was how quickly Earth's scientific community was adapting to the situation. Above them, aboard the Starweaver, First Observer Kethel watched with growing concern as humans across Earth's sphere of influence began not just detecting, but actively experimenting with the quantum network. What had taken other species centuries of careful study, humans were attempting to reverse engineer in days. "They're going to hurt themselves," Linra warned, her energy patterns fluctuating with worry. "No species can safely adapt to this level of technology this quickly." And yet, Kethel responded, "They haven't had a single critical failure. Look at their approach. They're not just copying what they see. They're innovating." Indeed, within the Horizon's quantum labs, Elena and her team had already begun developing their own variations on the alien communication methods. Rather than simply mimicking the patterns they received, they were finding ways to achieve similar results using Earth's existing technology in novel ways. "It's like they gave us a quantum dictionary," Elena explained to Maya during one of their brief breaks. "But instead of just learning their words, we're creating our own dialect. Simpler, maybe, but also more efficient in some ways." The alien vessels, which they learned belonged to a species called the Arbiters, seemed equally fascinated by humanity's rapid progress. Their communications became more frequent, more detailed, and increasingly focused on understanding how humans were approaching these new concepts. But not everyone in the galaxy was pleased with this rapid exchange of knowledge. In the deeper quantum frequencies that humans couldn't yet access, heated debates raged among the various alien civilizations observing Earth's emergence. "They must be contained," insisted one faction. "Their development is too chaotic, too unpredictable." "They must be guided," argued another. "Their creativity could revolutionize our understanding of the universe." "They must be studied," declared a third. "Never have we seen a species that thinks in such unusual ways." Aboard the Horizon, unaware of these debates but sensing the growing tension in their interactions with the Arbiters, Maya made a decision. During one of their regular communication sessions, she authorized Elena to share something unique: the complete history of human scientific development, including all our false starts, failed theories, and revolutionary breakthroughs. "Let them see how we think," she told her crew. "Let them understand that our chaos is our strength." The response to this transmission was immediate and unprecedented. The quantum network lit up with activity as species throughout the local galaxy began accessing and analyzing humanity's scientific history. They were shocked not just by the speed of human development, but by the sheer number of different approaches humans had tried for each problem they encountered. Where other species carefully built upon established principles, humans seemed to delight in finding exceptions to rules, exploring multiple solutions simultaneously, and learning as much from their failures as their successes. In the Starweaver's observation chamber, Kethel watched as the data spread through the quantum network. They're not just entering galactic society, he realized. They're going to transform it. On the Horizon's bridge, Maya received a new transmission, an invitation. The arbiters were requesting Earth send representatives to a gathering of species, not as observers or students, but as full participants in galactic civilization. They want us to share our perspective, Alina said, reading through the quantum patterns. They believe our way of thinking could help solve problems that have stumped other species for millennia. Maya smiled, thinking of humanity's long history of dreaming about this moment. But none of those dreams had quite captured the reality, that we would be welcomed not for our technological advancement, but for our unique way of looking at the universe. Send our acceptance, she ordered, and inform Earth that we're about to take our first official steps into a much larger community. As the message was sent, none of them could have known that they were about to step into the middle of a crisis that would test not just humanity's innovative thinking, but our very understanding of reality itself. The Galactic Assembly Station hung in space like a crystalline snowflake, its transparent surfaces refracting starlight in impossible patterns. The ESS Horizon approached alongside ships from 12 other human research vessels, each chosen to represent Earth at this unprecedented gathering. Maya stood at her viewport, watching the alien ships arrive. Some moved like liquid mercury, others seemed to bend space itself, and still others appeared to simply materialize from nowhere. But something about their movements caught her tactical officer's attention. "Captain," Lieutenant Marcus Wong called out, his eyes fixed on his tactical display. "I'm noticing something odd about the arrival patterns. The ships are maintaining unusual distances from certain sectors of space." Alina, who had been studying the quantum readings, suddenly straightened. "He's right. There's a distortion in the quantum field. It's subtle, but it's growing." In the assembly chamber, representatives from over 300 species gathered to discuss what the arbiters had called a matter of grave concern. Maya and Alina represented humanity, still adjusting to the neural translators that allowed instantaneous communication across species. First speaker Kethel, his crystalline form radiating patterns of light, addressed the gathering. "We face a crisis unprecedented in galactic history. The quantum fabric of space-time itself is becoming unstable." The chamber erupted in a cascade of neural impulses as species debated, argued, and shared data. Alina, however, was focused on the technical readings being shared through the quantum network. Her eyes widened as she processed the information. "This is fascinating," she whispered to Maya. "The quantum instability. It's not random. It's following patterns similar to fluid dynamics." On the other side of the chamber, Linra, now revealed as the head of the Galactic Science Council, was presenting the official analysis. "The distortions are expanding exponentially. Our models predict catastrophic failure of local spacetime within 6 months." The assembly descended into chaos as various factions argued over theoretical solutions, each more complex and time-consuming than the last. Maya noticed Alina had gone very quiet, her expression distant in the way it always was when she was processing complex data. "What are you thinking?" Maya asked. "They're approaching this wrong," Alina replied, still staring at the data streams. "They're trying to solve it like a quantum physics problem. But what if?" She straightened suddenly. "Captain, I need to contact the Horizon." Lieutenant Wong might have accidentally stumbled onto something crucial. Within hours, the Horizon's science lab had become a hub of frantic activity. Alina had commandeered the main quantum array, using it to map the distortions in ways the other species hadn't considered. Marcus Wong's tactical background provided a unique perspective on the patterns they were seeing. "Look at this," Alina explained to the gathered alien scientists, who watched with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "The distortions aren't just affecting quantum fields, they're behaving like turbulence in a fluid. Space-time itself is flowing like water around obstacles we can't see." "Impossible," declared a senior arbiter scientist. "Space-time cannot flow." The mathematics work perfectly," Alina interrupted, pulling up a series of equations. "We've seen similar patterns in Earth's oceans. When multiple currents interact around underwater obstacles, they create vortices that can persist for weeks. What we're seeing in space is the same principle, just at a quantum level." Maya watched as the alien scientists processed this comparison. It was such a human way of thinking, taking a complex problem in one domain and finding parallels in something completely different. The aliens had been so focused on quantum mechanics they'd missed the simple fluid dynamics playing out on a cosmic scale. "If we're right," Marcus added, highlighting sections of the tactical display, "these distortions aren't the problem. They're symptoms. Something is disrupting the natural flow of space-time, creating quantum eddies that are growing larger and more unstable." "But what could be massive enough to disrupt space-time itself?" Maya asked. Alina's expression was grim. "That's the real problem, isn't it? Whatever it is, it's invisible to normal space." But she manipulated the quantum display, overlaying the tactical data with the fluid dynamic patterns they'd observed. A shape began to emerge, enormous, complex, and completely alien. "There's something there," she said quietly. "Something huge, existing partially outside our reality, creating these distortions as our universe flows around it. And it's getting bigger." The alien scientists stared at the display in shocked silence. They had been looking for a quantum mechanical solution to what they thought was a quantum mechanical problem. Instead, humans had seen patterns that reminded them of ocean currents and applied that simple observation to uncover something far more terrifying. "We need to call an emergency session of the assembly," Maya decided. "They need to see this now." As they prepared their presentation, Maya couldn't help but notice the way the alien scientists were looking at them, not with the previous curiosity about humanity's unusual methods, but with something closer to awe. In less than a day, humans had seen what they had missed in months of study. The Galactic Assembly's emergency chamber buzzed with neural transmissions as 1,000 alien minds struggled to process Alina's discovery. The quantum distortions weren't random deterioration. They were ripples in space-time caused by something moving through higher dimensions, like a shark's fin breaking the ocean's surface. "Conventional containment has failed," Linra announced, her energy form pulsing with urgency. "The disruptions are growing exponentially. We estimate total structural failure of local space-time within 36 hours. Maya watched the holographic displays showing the spread of quantum instabilities. Each projection ended the same way. Catastrophic collapse spreading across hundreds of light years. The assembled species debated increasingly complex solutions, each more theoretical than the last. But Alina wasn't watching the projections. Her attention was fixed on something else entirely. The maintenance feeds from the Horizon's quantum drive cooling system. "Lieutenant Wong," she called suddenly. "Remember that problem we had last month with the drive coolant?" Marcus looked up from his tactical display, confused. "The resonance issue, when the coolant flow patterns started amplifying instead of dampening." "Exactly." Alina's fingers flew across her console, pulling up the maintenance logs. "We solved it by introducing controlled turbulence into the system. What if we could do the same thing to space-time itself?" The idea was so absurd that the neural translators took several seconds to process it. The alien scientists stared at Alina as if she'd suggested they solve the crisis by asking it politely to go away. "You want to deliberately increase chaos in an already unstable system." First speaker Kethel's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. That's exactly what we're trying to prevent. But Maya saw where Elena was going. No, listen to her. When we had that coolant problem, adding more turbulence actually stabilized the system by breaking up the resonance patterns. What if these quantum distortions are actually resonance effects from whatever that thing is, trying to move through our space? Elena nodded eagerly. We're approaching this wrong. We keep trying to reinforce local space-time, to hold it rigid against the intrusion. But what if space-time needs to flex instead of resist? The concept was so counterintuitive that most species took several minutes to process it. The arbiters, with their rigid adherence to established physics, were particularly resistant, but the Vex, whose crystalline nature gave them unique insight into structural dynamics, were the first to understand. Like a skyscraper designed to sway in an earthquake, their chief scientist observed, rigidity leads to catastrophic failure. Flexibility allows survival. Working with almost manic intensity, Elena and a growing team of cross-species scientists began modeling their unorthodox solution. They would need to modify the quantum drives of hundreds of ships, synchronizing them to create controlled turbulence in the fabric of space-time itself. It's like, Elena searched for an analogy the aliens would understand, like creating a controlled series of waves to guide a massive object through water. We're not trying to stop this thing anymore. We're trying to help it move through our reality without tearing it apart. The modifications were dangerous, experimental, and completely contrary to everything the galactic community had learned about safe quantum engineering. It was, in other words, a perfectly human solution. As the fleet began implementing Elena's modifications, Maya received an urgent communication from Earth. More quantum distortions were appearing in other sectors. Whatever was pushing through into their reality, it was doing so in multiple locations simultaneously. How much time do we have? Maya asked, watching the nearest distortion growing visibly larger on their sensors. At current acceleration, Elena checked her calculations. Maybe 4 hours before critical failure begins. We need to test this theory now. The first test nearly ended in disaster. When they activated the modified quantum drives, the local distortions intensified dramatically. Several alien ships immediately withdrew, their crews unwilling to trust such a radical approach. But then something unexpected happened. The chaotic quantum patterns began to organize themselves, forming structures that none of their sensors could quite comprehend. It was as if they'd created a language in the quantum foam of space-time itself. The distortions. Lieutenant Wong stared at his tactical display in disbelief. They're responding to our interference. Not fighting it, responding to it. Elena's eyes widened as new data poured in. Captain, I don't think this entity is trying to break through into our reality by force. I think it's been trying to communicate, but the fundamental differences between our spaces made that impossible. Until now. Maya looked at the swirling patterns of quantum energy surrounding their fleet. They had started this effort trying to prevent a catastrophe. Instead, they might have accidentally created first contact with something from beyond the boundaries of their universe itself. She opened a channel to the assembly. All ships maintain current quantum field configurations. I think we're about to make history in a way none of us expected. As the entity's response grew stronger, the gathered species watched in awe as humanity's seemingly chaotic solution opened the door to something unprecedented. They had broken every rule of quantum mechanics to achieve it. But that, they were learning, was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to see past the established rules to possibilities that no one else had imagined. Captain Maya Patel stood on the bridge of the ESS Horizon, watching as the massive fleet of alien vessels moved into position. The quantum barrier generators they'd developed were untested on this scale, but they had no choice. The entity from between realities was now visible to the naked eye. A vast, shifting mass of impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. All ships reporting ready, Lieutenant Wong announced, his hand steady on the tactical controls despite the gravity of the situation. Quantum field synchronization at 98% and holding. Alina's voice came through from the science lab, where she was coordinating with scientists from a dozen species. The fluid dynamics model is confirmed. If we can create enough turbulence in the space-time fabric, we should be able to push it back through the breach. Should, Maya repeated quietly. It was a very human plan, using the very instabilities that threatened them as a weapon against their source. The other species had thought it insane at first, but they'd come to recognize the elegant simplicity of it. Quantum field fluctuations increasing, called out one of the arbiter ships. Entity is attempting to breach again. Maya took a deep breath. Everything they learned about space, about quantum physics, about reality itself had led to this moment. All ships, initiate quantum barrier sequence on my mark. The view outside the horizon's windows became impossible as hundreds of ships activated their modified quantum drives simultaneously. Space itself began to ripple and fold, creating artificial turbulence in reality. The entity, sensing the disturbance, began to react. "It's fighting back," Alina reported. "The quantum signatures are—" "Wait." There was sudden excitement in her voice. "Captain, it's not fighting. It's communicating." Through the quantum network, patterns of unimaginable complexity began to emerge. The entity wasn't trying to invade their reality. It was lost, trapped between dimensions, and their quantum turbulence was the first thing it had encountered that it could interact with. "Redirect power to the communication arrays," Maya ordered. "Alina, can we establish a dialogue?" What followed was perhaps the most unique first contact in galactic history. Through the combined quantum network of hundreds of ships, using principles of fluid dynamics applied to space-time itself, humanity and their alien allies began to communicate with a being that existed partially outside their universe. The entity, they learned, was a survivor of a universe that had collapsed. It had found its way into the space between realities but had become trapped, its attempts to find a new home causing the devastating quantum distortions they detected. "We can help it transition fully into our space," Alina suggested, already working on the calculations. "If we modify the quantum barrier field to create a stable corridor." The arbiters and other species quickly grasped the concept, adding their own expertise to the human framework. What had started as a defensive measure became a rescue operation on a cosmic scale. Hours later, as the entity safely emerged into normal space, now appearing as a magnificent crystalline structure that defied Euclidean geometry, the gathered species watched in awe. They had not only averted a crisis, but gained an ally with knowledge from beyond their own universe. In the assembly chamber, first speaker Kethel addressed the gathered representatives. "Today marks a turning point in galactic history. We faced a threat we could not understand, and it was the youngest among us who showed us the way forward." Maya and Alina stood with their fellow humans as Kethel continued. "Humanity's greatest strength is not their technology or their intelligence, but their ability to see connections where others see only chaos. They taught us that sometimes the simplest solution requires the most unconventional thinking." The quantum network lit up with agreements and celebrations from hundreds of species. The entity, now able to communicate clearly through the network, shared its gratitude and offered to teach them about the universe beyond their own. Back on the horizon's bridge, Maya looked out at the assembled fleet, at the magnificent crystalline form of their new ally, and at the stars that suddenly seemed full of endless possibilities. "So," Alina said, coming to stand beside her, "what do you think we'll discover next?" Maya smiled. "I don't know, but I'm certain we'll figure it out together." She gestured to the view before them, where ships of all species were gathering around the entity, already beginning to learn from it. After all, that's what humanity does best. We don't just solve problems, we turn them into opportunities. As the horizon took its place among the fleet, Maya reflected on how far they'd come. Humanity had entered the galactic stage by accident, advanced through curiosity, and saved the day through creativity. They had proved that sometimes the best way to understand the universe was to look at it from an entirely new perspective. The age of isolation was over. The age of collaboration had begun, and somewhere in the vast expanse of space, other mysteries waited to be solved by the combined wisdom of 1,000 species and humanity's unique way of seeing the impossible not as a barrier, but as an invitation to explore.